Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I am Saquon Lawrence, President and CEO and founder of Revolution Institute here in Chicago. And before I get started, I want to give a special shout out and thanks to the City of Chicago, Department of Planning, and the city's Bureau of Small Business Development. So thank you all for being here. And I also want to thank, before I talk about who we are, I want to really thank the Leary groups here today. I want to thank Jean and Jonathan and Janetta and Claudia. Thank you all for doing this with us and partnering with us. Um, so, Revolution Institute, we're a community economic development organization here in Chicago. We're also a social enterprise, a workforce solutions organization, and a worker co-op developer. Our mission really is to close the wealth gap through community wealth building initiatives, and we have three strategies that we deploy to get at that. One, which is what we're going to be talking about today, is our social acquisition and conversion of manufacturing companies to employee ownership. And Project Equity is going to get into that. And Project Equity, of course, is here because they're really one of the best in the business. They've done these deals, they've closed these deals, they've been doing it for a while. And so it's just great to be partnering with them. The other thing that we do is work with early stage entrepreneurs in clean energy, both individually and for those who want to start employee owned companies. And lastly, we work with the city colleges, particularly MTech, to develop what we call the workers of the future in advanced manufacturing. So that's who we are. We're really excited about this conversation this afternoon. And with that, I'm going to pass it on over to Jonathan.
Hi, hi, Saquon. My name is Jonathan Snyder, and I serve as the Executive Director of North Branch Works. For over 40 years, NBW has promoted economic and community development along the North Branch of the Chicago River, helping entrepreneurs, small and medium businesses to open, grow, and thrive. We serve as the City of Chicago Delegate Agency for the Department of Planning and Development's Local Industrial Retention Initiative, or LERI program. So, what is a LERI? LERIs are nonprofits selected by the city to provide assistance to retain, attract, and grow industrial and manufacturing businesses. We are one of 10 LERIs throughout Chicago, and collectively we help businesses to identify site locations, connect with funding opportunities, find and develop talent, and interact with city officials and their alders. We also recommend policies to grow these sectors. This is important because the industrial sectors, it constitutes over 11% of the Chicagoland GDP, provides career path jobs, which provide family sustaining head of household employment without requiring an advanced degree. And these job opportunities help to build strong neighborhoods. LERIs have a deep connection to the manufacturers in the area, and they're the city's best resource for growing these sectors. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Claudia Perez to introduce her LERI. Claudia?
Thank you, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Claudia Perez. I'm with the I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Northwest Chicago Development Corporation. Our organization has been around since 1977, and as Jonathan said, we are a LERI, a Local Industrial Retention Initiative. I oversee the largest industrial corridors are the Northwest Industrial Corridor and the Galewood Armitage Corridor. And Jean, I'll send it off to you. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jean. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Ravenswood Chamber of Commerce. We're honored to be a part of the LERI program with our colleagues here in DPD. Aside from that, we also serve as a participant in the city's Neighborhood Business Development Center program, which is a fancy way of saying we offer a baseline of free programs and services to entrepreneurs across the northeast side of the city. And then we also manage Special Service Area 31, which provides an additional suite of services and programs to support brick and mortar businesses in our commercial corridors. We've been hearing conversations come up a lot around the topic of succession planning over the last couple of years. We've hosted a number of them, but we're especially excited to be a part of this conversation with this group. So taking a really different progressive approach to this topic and meeting the needs of business owners in a way that we're not finding many other resources that do the same. So that's my piece. With that, I will pass it along to Janita Tucker.
Thank you, Jean. My name is Janita Tucker. I'm the Executive Director of the Peterson-Pulaski Business and Industrial Council. We serve the business areas or the businesses along in the far northwest side of Chicago. The 5 official corridors that we serve are the Peterson-Pulaski, Elston Armstrong, Northwest Highway, Knox, and Reed-Dunning. Our information will be made available at the end of this program, so you can reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Janita. Thank you, everyone. I'm really grateful for the partners that we have that made today possible. I really wish I could see you all, but I know it's a webinar. But to everyone that's in the room, I do want to take a moment to say thank you so much for being here. No matter who you are, whether you are a business owner, advisor, broker, employee, searcher, community leader, or even someone I did not name, this conversation is for you. As we get started, I want to quickly introduce who Project Equity is. And so Project Equity, we are a national nonprofit. And at our core, we help business owners preserve their legacy through employee ownership. And while we do that, we help build long-term wealth for working people and people of color. So we've been doing this work for over a decade, and we bring real expertise in structuring these deals and financing them. We also work closely with advisors and even like the partners that we have today to really educate people to know that this option does exist, and it's a great option for business owners. And so a little bit about me as we get started, just so you know who you listening to today. And so for the last 8 years, I have dedicated my career really focused on helping small business owners and, business support organization grow and prepare for what's next. And earlier this year, I joined Project Equity because from that work, I really was passionate about making sure that every business owner know their option, because you all are the backbone of our country. And I want to ensure that you all, when it's time to plan for the future, you know what exists. And so that's really my why that drives this work. For today, I have the pleasure of walking you guys through the content. And so this is the agenda that we have. And so we'll talk about what employee ownership is. We'll talk about the benefits and the why employee ownership matters for Chicago business owners today. We'll talk about the different forms it can take. We'll also share some real stories from businesses that have made the transition. And then lastly, we'll talk about how does it work and even share some of the readiness factors. What is employee ownership? Employee ownership can be a way for an owner to sell their business at market rate while helping employees build wealth through an ownership stake. Now, I want to be very specific because there is a version of employee ownership that's not what we're talking about today. Because there's equity grants, there's stock options, there's management buyout, but those transfer ownership to like a select few, usually key people or senior leaders. And that's not broad-based employee ownership. What we do is different. When we talk about broad-based employee ownership, we talk about being able to give all employees, not just management, the opportunity to become owners. The whole team have an opportunity to participate while they are employed within the organization. Why employee ownership and why now? So right now in our country, if you all didn't know, we are facing something called the silver tsunami. And it's really that we have over half of the job creating businesses in our country that are at risk of not transitioning because there's a lot of baby boomers that's getting ready to retire over the next decade. Specifically in Chicago, there are thousands of businesses, and even in greater Illinois as well. And these businesses, they are anchor in our neighborhoods. I think in Chicago, we have like these businesses really make the communities. And I love how each businesses within Chicago has their own personalities and stuff, but these businesses, not only are they anchors in their neighborhoods, they provide jobs, and they are honestly essential parts of the fabric of the local community. And right now, within the next decade, a lot of them will be facing transition, and most of them don't have a plan. Most of the time, especially back in the days, selling to family members was one of the most popular ways that people kind of transition their business. But I think over the years, it's gone down to only about 30% are transitioning to their family, and this is not really a bad thing. And part of why I say that is because this is a product of the fact that these owners have done really well for themselves, and they've been able to allow their families to consider new things. And so now that kids may not want to consider this, but now what it does present is that these owners need another path. As I do this work, one of the stats for me that's really hard is that only 20% of businesses sell. That goals to sell and list their business actually sell. And the reason why this is hard is because that means that the other 80% are left with not a good answer. And the work that we do with all our partners here today is working in that gap. And why we present employee ownership is because employees are the built-in buyers. They already know the business and they're already invested in the success of the organization. So as we talk about, I know today our focus is going to be talking about employee ownership as a succession option, but I did want to stop and also share that employee ownership is also a great tool for broad-based ownership strategy that owners can use at different stages of their business. And so it can create liquidity for an owner who may want to free up capital without a full exit, especially if they don't know, what do I do after I leave the business? Owners can also use this to drive engagement and also retention, especially if they, in this job market, finding the right talent in certain field is very difficult, but also maintaining them can be difficult. And so some owners can look at this option as a way to just really retain the folks that they have. So part of my work is talking to business owners, as they reach out to us. And usually as we talk to them, there's really these six key considerations that they have. It's really thinking through, okay, what is the market value of my business? What is the liquidity? What would I get at sale? What are the tax benefits that I may be able to get? Can I control the process or not? Thinking about legacy, like what do I want when I look back at my business 5 years later? Like what are some of the key factors that I want to see within my business, and then retaining employees. As we look at this chart, I'll pause real quick so you all can really see it. I know some of the font may be a little small, but what this chart shows you is some of the options that owners may have when it comes to transitioning their business. And so, a strategic buyer or private equity, one of the things that it can do is that it can provide a very strong market value and maybe even liquidity. But one of the key things that an owner may do with that option is that they don't really have full control of the process. And they don't really know what will happen to their legacy or their employees, especially if they want to really streamline the business so that way they can sell it again. Now, with a management buyout, you can preserve your legacy and your team, and you may be able to also keep some control. But liquidity becomes a real challenge because sometimes some of the folks that may be buying the business don't have the capital to be able to buy it. And there isn't much tax advantage to that process. With family transfer, if you have family transfer, this is honestly a wonderful option if it's available, because it does protect the legacy and it, most likely may keep your team in place. You may be able to control the process. But the reality is not every family have a member who's ready to step in. And as I mentioned earlier, that's okay. As we can see in this chart, employee ownership is the only option on this chart that really checks all the different boxes, especially for owners who don't have a family member that's ready to take it over. So let's talk about the benefits. So first and foremost, there's a lot of benefits for the business. Employee ownership companies see profit margins at 8.5% higher than their peers. And part of the reason why is because employees become more engaged. They take greater ownership of the company's profitability because they start to realize, okay, within my role, they start to understand how within their role, all the little things that they do, how it leads up and impacts the profit, but also later on, the profit sharing that they may receive. And so this leads to higher employee retention, as we can see. It increases productivity, and it also increases sales as well. So the employee ownership also benefits the employee. And so what it does is it provides employees with quality jobs. Employees not only get to keep their job, but they're able to get higher wages, and also develop new skills. I think one of the things that makes me excited is when employees start to step into new areas and learn new things about themselves that they didn't know. And they really get challenged. They really get challenged in great ways. Employee retention. Employees are able to know that their job is staying and stick around because they feel like, okay, they bought in and they have better understanding of what's happening as well. The other thing that we are also excited about is that it creates wealth creation, that over time, these employees are able to create wealth for themselves and their families. For most of you all today, I know this may be the area you guys want to focus on. And so employee ownership really benefits the selling owners in these three core ways. And so what it does is it gives the owner a fair sales price. It's not a discount, it's a real transaction. As an owner, you can really control the process because we know that selling your business is not an easy thing. And there's a lot of emotions that goes with it. And there's a lot. And so I think you really get to decide how you want to do it, whether you want to do 30% to start with, or if you want to set it up this way or that way. And so you really get to work with your employees to really figure out, okay, what is the exit that makes sense for me and my family, and kind of build towards that. The other piece is it really allows you to build your legacy. As I mentioned earlier, that businesses, especially in Illinois, mean a lot to their community. And so you can really preserve the impact that your business has had on the local community, the culture, the people, and even some of the assets that you have. Right now, let's talk about the models. But before we get started, I want to go deeper. I want to talk about what changes because I know later on this may be a question that comes up, and so I wanted to get ahead of it. And so when we talk about employee ownership, operations and management does not change for the most part. And the reason why is because you have been running a successful business and with the operation and the management you have. And so we really want you to keep it the way it is. Now, if you are exiting owner, most likely we'll talk to you to figure out, okay, who will be replacing you, and there may be some shift within the leadership team, and over time there may be other people taking on new roles. One of the key things that's going to change with employee ownership is going to be governance and ownership. So with governance, if you did not have a board of directors, we would help you establish one. And if you did have a board of directors, it will be expanded to ensure that there's some representation from the employees. When it comes to ownership, this whole transition is really about that. That's one of the key things it's focused on is shifting the ownership. And so control and benefit moves from the previous owner to the employees. But if you only doing a partial transition, it becomes shared. So now that we talked about that, we can get into the models. And so within employee ownership, broad-based employee ownership, there's three main structures. And the right one really depends on the size, the culture, and the goals that you have for the business. We'll start first with the ESOP because they are the most popular one. And sometimes people may think employee ownership is ESOP, but this ESOP is a part of employee ownership. And so when we talk about ESOP, ESOP is a qualified retirement plan. It's like a 401k, but it's invested primarily in the stocks of the sponsoring company. Assets are held in a trust with a trustee in place. It's a vehicle for purchasing stocks from existing shareholders at market value with a friendly buyer like the employees. The employees don't buy in. They are gifted their stake, and it grows over time during their tenure with the organization. Now, once the employee leaves, that fund will be passed over to them, and if they are not at retirement age, it would be transferred to another account. One of the reasons why a lot of folks look at ESOP is because there are a lot of meaningful tax savings for the company, the seller, and also the employees. But one of the key things about ESOP is that it is highly regulated, inexpensive to set up and maintain. And so we don't recommend ESOP for businesses that are small. It's really best for larger companies that are 40 employees or more and have a strong leadership bench and also a strong financial track. Now, the next one is worker-owned cooperative. So with the worker-owned cooperative, it's the business is owned and governed by its employees, and there's this one share, one vote core parts of co-ops. The board is made up a majority of the worker owners, and there is a profit sharing. It's called patronage, and it's really set up based on like the hours worked. And employees in this model, they have to choose to become owners. And so they are not automatically added into it. They have to choose to be owners. And if they choose to be owners, there is a minimal buy-in amount that you can see as like skin in the game. But one of the key things that's important to note is that whatever the amount is, the amount, first of all, should be something that's reasonable for all the employees that they can all reach. But whatever the amount is, whenever they leave the organization, that fund must be returned to them. And so once they elect to become an owner within the organization, they receive rights to vote, but also to share in the profits as well. With the worker co-ops, there are some federal tax benefits, and it's a lower cost to set up and maintain. One of the things I like to say to folks is that worker co-op is honestly good for any size of business. But I think personally for us, we recommend for at least 10 or more employees, but it's a great fit for businesses that have a strong team culture. Now, the last one is employee ownership trust. This one is extremely popular in the UK, and over the last 3 to 4 years have been gaining a lot of stream in the US. And part of the reason why is because this is one of the most customizable option. And so the EOT is a form of a perpetual purpose trust. And so the way that it works is that the trust holds some or all of the shares, and it protects the company's purpose in perpetuity, which makes the business very difficult to ever sell, which can be very attractive for some owners who really want to ensure that the business is here forever to support the cause that they want the business to serve. And as I mentioned, the purpose for the trust is usually tied to the company's mission. Now, the business continues to be run by management and employees day to day. The trust distribute profit sharing. It could either be annually or quarterly, whatever the owner decides to set it up. And there may also be some other potential benefits that they could set up. Well, with all three option, the profit sharing is usually a formula. And it's usually based on sometimes like how long somebody's been here, the hours they work, and different organization may set up the formula in a way that makes sense for them. And so uh, with employee ownership, with EOT, sorry, um, employees get rights of representation on the governing board. It's not going to be a majority like a worker co-op, but they do get representation, and they are able to vote on key issues based on what's defined in the trust agreement. And every employee is a member of the ownership group. So this is a very, very brief overview of these forms. There's a lot that goes into each of these structures, but I think one of the key things I do want you all to leave with as I transition to the next thing is that there is an option that may work for any business out there. And what we do is really help you to assess, what might make sense for you and your business, and your goal and your team. Okay, so as we, share all this information, I think it's really great to share stories with folks who actually have done the transition so you can hear directly from them. So I have a few case studies to present you all. So the first one is Laura. And so I'll read her quote and I'll also then give you guys some background on her business. What Laura says is that this was absolutely the right thing for the company, the community, the employees, the fishers, and all of the stakeholders that rely on this business. And so Laura's story is a very special one because she founded this business in 2004, and she realized that this business was essential to the ecosystem that she was in. And I think as she looked for retirement, I think it became a no-brainer for her that she really wanted this business to exist and to continue to serve this purpose. And so she intentionally sought out how to do this and found Project Equity and was able to work with us to ensure that for the lifetime of her business, that the business can continue to work to serve the ecosystem that's there, but also continue to thrive and help the business and the employees that helped her build it. The next story I have is Jesse. Jesse's story is really cool because Jesse, he was running his podcast called Maximum Fun, and he enjoyed it, but I think there was a lot of weight and pressure, and some of you all may know as owners of being an owner, and he realized I didn't get into running a podcast to do all of this. I really want to run my own podcast. And so when it came time to think of, okay, what do I do next? The best thing that he thought was like, let me sell it to my employees because I love them. I enjoy working with them. And even as I mentioned earlier, in terms of controlling the process, even though he wanted to sell the business, he still wanted to still work in the company. And so, Jesse decided to, sell the business, and now he's just instead of just being the main owner, he's just one of the employee owners. And so I'll quickly read his quote. Maximum Fun has always operated under the principle that doing what is right is more important than doing what is most profitable. And that's the company, that the company should grow responsibly for the long term. And so I love his story because of that. And so, with these two stories, what it shows is that these are, very different companies. And they both chose two different models, but what it did, it had the same outcome. It allowed each owner to really figure out, okay, what do I want with my exit, and how do I set it up in a way that benefits me, my family, my staff, and also my community, and I'll also add another, also the business as well. And so the people who built it are the ones who carry it forward. And that's one of the key things that we personally really want to see within Chicago, Illinois area as well. Okay, so we shared the stories and we shared a lot of stats. But now let's get into the detail of like, how does this transition happen? So at a very high level, I'll walk you through how the sale will work. And so the sale of a business or its share of its stocks are sold to a new entity where the employees are now the owners. Then the purchase of the old business by the new entity would be financed by a loan that would be paid down over time through the new employee ownership entity, with future cash flow coming from the business. And so, in summary, this transition to employee ownership would allow you, as the selling owner, to receive payment, and the new employee-owned business will continue to thrive and operate. Now, ideally, it's good when management stays in place as before. But if you are an exiting owner, we can plan to for this part of the transition to figure out, okay, who will be the new management that's stepping in, and if you don't have somebody stepping in working with you to figure out, okay, who would be the new management that will come in to really ensure that the business continues to thrive and move forward. So, financing the sale. And so typically when financing the sale, it can include a traditional bank or CDFI, and also some owner financing in the form of a seller note. And so what this means is that the CDFI or the bank would pay the owner the amount that they finance at the time of sale. And so let's say 70%. And then the owner would agree to take the remaining 30% as future installment to be paid back over time, for about 5 to 7 years, including interest. This option would allow owners to get paid up front as well and garner interest with the seller financing. And so we also have actually a story of when I say managing controlling the process, we have a story with a business that we recently transitioned in Chicago, and the owner, because he wanted to stick around for a long time, personally decided to do a full seller note, because he just wanted to just inherit more of that, and he knew that he was going to be around to grow the business as well. Okay, so as we now let's talk about the process of how it works. And so the way this works is that, the beginning is exploration. And so exploration is usually talking to someone like me, someone on my BD team, or even talking to Lev Lin from Revolution Institute, really getting a sense of like, okay, could employee ownership work for my business? And so during that time, we are asking you some of the key criteria just to see, okay, could this be a good fit? Understand your timeline. After exploration, if we do assess that this is a good fit, with some of the basic assessment that we do, we would move you over to the exploration, to the feasibility phase. And so during the feasibility phase, this is usually about a 3-month process where we really do a deep dive with you to get a better understanding of your business, your management setup, and really just get deeper into the finance so that we, at the end of it, we can present you options in terms of, okay, what would be the sell price for your business? We'll present you, okay, what would be the model that we recommend for your business? And also, this would be a time, if you have not talked to your employees, this is the time where we would come in and talk to your employees and even present this option of like, okay, your owner is looking at this option. What do you think? One of the key things that we tell owners is that you don't need every employee to jump into this, because a lot of them, this is new. They don't know what this means, and sometimes change can be scary. But I think what you do need is at least a core team who's interested and ready to kind of take the lead in terms of helping with the transition if you want to move forward. And so I think I love the feasibility phase, because this is a great chance for business owners to really get a sense of like, okay, where am I at with my business? And that, at the end of this process, some business owners decide to move forward and some don't. But what they leave with is a roadmap to figure out, okay, here is where I am today. If I really wanted to explore employee ownership or even some of the other succession plan options, okay, here's some guideline in terms of things that I might need to do to be able to get the sell price that I really want. Because some owners have a sell price in mind, whether consciously or unconsciously. But not all the time they have stopped to really assess, okay, what is the true value of my business today? And so if you decide to move forward with us into the transition phase, this is where we are really just putting together the deal, working with your the core team of your employees through the transition plan, and really quarterbacking the deal, bringing the capital. And really just ensuring that everything works for both parties, the selling owner and also the new owners as well. And at the end of transition, we have closing the sale. Signing the dot, the owner gets the liquidity that they were looking for. And so one of the key thing that's important is that at the end of it, we have what we call a step four, which is a Thrive program. And so we really want to ensure that every business owner that we work with, business in general that we work with, have the support they need as they step into employee ownership. And so we stick around for the next 2 to 3 years to provide ongoing support. Just to ensure that the employee ownership aspect is set up properly. And I think this work is extremely important for us because, some of the folks, employees, they've never looked at numbers, they've never thought about this. And if you've never had a board of directors, a lot of this may be new to you. And so we don't want to leave you alone. We want to guide you. We have, a curriculum, but we really customize it per business to ensure that it really works for you and your business. And you all know that, okay, you as you build and move forward in this new entity, you have the support and the backing that you need to move forward. As I wrap up with this process, one of the key things I do want to say quickly is that this process is mainly for business owners who come directly to us, because there's time where business owners may come directly to us or to Revolution Institute. But as we work and do the work that we're doing, especially in Chicago, we also work closely with brokers, and we have a very specific process for working with brokers that aligns with how some of the deals move. And so, brokers, if you would like to get a better understanding of that, feel free to talk to us later, so that way we can provide you some more information on that process, and we can ensure that we help your client reach the sale that they want. Okay, so I want to quickly kind of walk you all through some of the readiness factor. And so one thing I would say is that we have been doing this work for the last 10 years. And so this readiness factor is based on what we've seen worked, at least for us. Now, within the employee ownership field, there are many other organizations that's doing this work. And so some of them may be able to work with smaller organizations. But at least for us, when we are working with businesses, one of the key factors for us is that it needs to be at least 12 employees or more. If you are considering an ESOP, we recommend at least 40 employees or more. It's very important that the business is profitable, because we don't want you to transition a business that is failing or struggling to your employees, because part of what's important is that because we really want this to be a win-win, one for the owner, but also a win for the employees, that they can really build wealth through this process. The next one is having a proven track record, that it's an established business, and we usually say with at least 3 years of experience, 3 years of financials that we can really look at. And it's very, very important for it to be a minimal debt. As I mentioned in some of the previous slide, the way that this done is it's a leverage buyout. And so it's really based on the debt capacity of the organization. And so it's great to have very minimal debt to ensure that this process could really go through. Next, this is the end of like the presentation piece. And so right now we are going to transition to Q&A. Okay, I have employees in the US, Canada, Korea, and India. Is it possible to set up an ESOP with employees in other countries? That is a great question. I'm going to pass that question to Stacy, who's here and has a lot of experience with ESOP, so that she can answer that to you directly.
Yeah, hello all. What a great question. Thank you. And thanks everybody for being here. So there's a complicated answer there. The answer is yes. And it takes some creative design work with the attorneys designing the plan document and also identifying how offshore employees would be recognized. So, yes, and complicated.
Thank you, Stacey.
Mhm.
Okay, the next question we have is how are businesses that own real estate, plant, warehouse, any different or more complex if converting to co-op? I'll answer this, and Stacey, if you want to add on to it, feel free to. I think what we usually recommend, at least when transition to employee ownership, is to at first not to include some of the real estate. And it's not complex at all. I think sometimes we separate the deal, and then you can add that on later on. But Stacey, feel free to add to more detail to that question.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So taking on the acquisition of the business and the acquisition of the real estate at the same time those are actually two separate transactions. Obviously, they have to be underwritten differently, and the capital needs to come from two different places. And sometimes that eats up all of the debt capacity, the ability of the company to service both of those debts. So usually what we do is recommend that the business have a lease in place with the current owner of the property to run the term of the financing for the acquisition of the business. So we acquire the business then pays off that acquisition financing. When that's done, they're ready to take on the capital requirements for the acquisition of the real estate. The lease is over at that point, and they can go get the money to do that. If that's impossible for some reason, it can be done simultaneously. It's a lot for the business to take on at one time in terms of servicing all of that debt.
Thank you, Stacey. The next question we have is from Bob. Okay, this is it. When you look at step two, feasibility and readiness, what are the most common deal breakers or surprises that you see that causes a business to pause or pivot away from employee ownership? And how early in the process can those typically be identified? That's a great question, Bob. One of the key thing I do want to say, sorry. One of the key thing I do want to say is that as we do this work and even engage with brokers and advisors, is that a lot of business owners are not always ready for the transition. And they at time wait until crisis happen. And so they have not really looked or considered, okay, what do I want with a transition? And so as I do this work and as we as an organization, everybody here, I think what we really desire is that business owners would realize that yes, transition or even succession planning is not something that everyone want to talk about. But I think knowing your option is extremely helpful so that way you can plan towards it. But to answer your question directly, Bob, I think one of the key things for employee ownership is the employee count. And also, we can go lower than some of the other options like, private equity, and management buyout. But I think there is a minimum of like what do you call it? At least $250,000 in EBITDA. And so at times what can happen is that a business owner may think that the EBITDA is a certain amount, or sometime it could be, and this is why we do during feasibility, we do a deep dive just to really get a sense of like the finance, because sometimes it's all based on how the finance is set up and truly understanding it. And this is why we tell folks like still talk to us because we have an amazing team, our client services team, who's been doing this work for 5 years and more, and they know how to go deep and ask questions over and over again to really have a great understanding of what's really happening to really help you figure out, okay, is this a good fit for you or not? And we really only move business owners forward if it's a good fit for them and they want to move forward. But I think at the end of the day, we want them to have the right information. This question's from Jim. What kind of impact has legal representation from both sides had in expediting or impeding the process? That's a great question, Jim. I'll quickly answer it. And if there's some more technical piece, Stacy, feel free to add on to it. But it it's legal representation is helpful and necessary in this process. But I don't think the legal piece is the part that hinders it. I think sometimes it's the emotional piece and really just trying to agree on the detail of the deal. And so that's how I'll answer it. But Stacey, I don't know if there's any specific technical answer that you may want to give
Yeah.
with that question.
The legal team on a transaction is incredibly important and necessary, like Holden said. So they will be a key piece. And usually you will have sell side legal and you will have buy side legal, meaning the future employee owners will have legal representation. If we're doing an ESOP, those legal resources will be hired by the trustee. In a co-op or an EOT that will be hired by the company. The selling owner or owners will also have their own legal representation. So I've done a lot of transactions. I have rarely seen legal resources impede the process. They are required to expedite it and fulfill it. When Project Equity or together with Revolution Institute is doing a transition, we will work with legal representation who have deep experience in doing EO transitions. So sometimes owners will want to bring their own legal representation to the deal. And often those legal representatives have no context or no experience in supporting an employee ownership transaction. Sometimes that can get tricky. And what we will usually do is suggest that there will be another legal counsel on board who can help navigate the intricacies of whatever form of employee ownership it is. And that will make it go much more smoothly. So yeah, I mean, it's important. You want to have legal experts in the room who know what they are doing vis-a-vis the employee ownership side of or dimension of the transaction.
Thank you, Stacy. And thank you for that question, Jim. We have another question that came in. It said, oh, I think I just lost. Okay, here it is. Our business is still young with only two permanent employees, but is there a way to set up employee ownership in the event of the owner's death and disability? The answer is yes. And so as I mentioned that, we have our specific criteria in terms of folks that we work with, but there's many other folks in the space. And so we're happy to have a conversation with you just to get a better understanding of your needs. And then we can redirect you to the right person or the resource to help you set that up. But I love that you were thinking ahead because that is that is our heart. We want everyone, no matter what, to begin thinking ahead. Okay, before any crisis happen, you have a sense of like what is your succession plan and have a game plan moving forward for it.
Yeah, and I would just add there for a really small company like you are demonstrating, sometimes it's easier to not put the cooperative structure in place because the cooperative structure is really built for a bigger set of people to operate it, if you will. But there are ways to set up an LLC and have it operate like a co-op without having the specific legal structures in place for that. And so for a much smaller company, what we call micro businesses under 5 employees, that's what we really recommend. Let's do something like an LLC setup. Let's make it act like a co-op, but let's not have it have the actual requirements of a co-op, just because that's a lot for just a few employees to manage.
Thank you, Stacy. There's one technical question for you again, Stacy.
I'm not an attorney, although I play one on Zoom from time to time, as you can tell. Uh, I think the jury's really out, and I can't really answer that because at the end of the day, legal counsel has a fiduciary job and needs to do their job. How much they are using AI in the background to support that is not necessarily clear to us. I will say that AI is coming fast to this space. Project Equity is doing a lot to look at that. We are using AI actively and judiciously in our own practice when we are transitioning businesses. Um, when a business works with Project Equity, we do a lot of the preparatory work from a legal standpoint, such that once the attorneys are engaged, it's a bit more turnkey. And so that saves on legal fees. And we will be using some AI going forward in our role in doing that. But I would say I think we're a long distance from sort of self-help, if you will, legal uh, for the legal aspects of business sale transactions, particularly in an employee ownership standpoint where you're really transitioning ownership to a group of employees who may or may not have the sophistication to fully understand and embrace what's happening. And so having a technical assistance provider like Project Equity and Revolution Institute involved helps really make sure that the buy side of that transaction is fully has the capacity to be making those decisions for themselves and really understanding what is happening there. This is not a transaction between an individual seller and an individual buyer where that individual buyer is maybe quite sophisticated and has their own set of counsel and advisors and things like that. So the role that both the technical assistance provider like us and the legal counsel on the buy side is there to not only ensure that the guardrails are up on the transaction, but also to really build the capacity of the buy side group.
For the sake of time, we'll be transitioning to the end, but these were amazing questions. And I love all the questions that came in. And a lot of the technical one just shows that you guys are really thinking about this. And so I'll pass it over to Levlin just to talk about next step. And then if there's anything else to add on, I'll come back on too.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Levelyn Roan, and I'm a part of the social acquisition team for Revolution Institute. My job is simple. It is to make the ask. Now that Holden and Stacy and the Learys have all kind of shared a bit about their respective organizations and what we are all doing, here's where the rubber meets the road. We need your help. There's about 30 of you, I think, that are still on this call, or 28. And for everyone here, there's something you could do for us, and that is to help us identify businesses that could be ready or are ready to at least have the transition conversation. Like Holden mentioned, some of those businesses may not be immediately ready to transition today, but they may be thinking about it, as the question just a few moments ago was asked. We need those businesses to be in touch with us. We will be more than happy to contact them and take the proverbial ball and run with it. But those are manufacturing businesses that are in and around Chicagoland, businesses that typically we would look for have at least 3 million or so in current revenue, but we're not wedded to that. If it's a little bit smaller or larger, we have that flexibility. EBITDA, that's a really fancy word for saying profitability. We'd like for them to be profitable. At least $500,000 in profitability gives the runway that was talked about earlier for there to be the potential for dividends to be paid as a part of the transition. So if you know of any manufacturing concern and an owner or owners who you think that would be open to this conversation, we ask you to please reach out and just let us know, and we'll take it from there. So the ask is simple. Think of any manufacturing company or concern in any area of Chicagoland, that's Chicago proper or the suburbs, that you think could be interested, and we will take it from there. Please let us know. And again, thank you for your time this afternoon and being a part of this webinar. And hopefully you were able to get something out of it. We do appreciate it, and hope to hear from some of you very, very soon.
And one other thing too is the QR code that's linked in this slide is for both Levelland Revolution and Project Equity. So if you would like to have a conversation with us, feel free to just, scan the QR code and schedule a meeting, because as we said, like, we really want to get this in front of business owners. And if you are thinking about this, or if you're a broker or an advisor, and you think you have a business owner that fit the criteria of what we are looking for, or want to even explore if there is an alignment, feel free to reach out to us. But we are at time, and we want to respect your time. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today, and we look forward to talking to you again.